Hey, what's going on, guys? Man, I really thought I could just enjoy a relaxing Sunday where I can watch week 1 of the NFL season, but instead I have to put out this emergency video because a lot of the high yield dividend warriors, they were just leaving way too much misinformation on my last video. The last video was about the weekly income ETF payers, XDTE and QDTE. Now, people really like these ETFs because they pay out dividends weekly, and they were accusing me of not being able to see the superpowers of what they call compound interest, and how compound interest gives you magic powers like you are Harry Potter and his wizardry friends. Now, compounding has become the high yield dividend warriors' new buzzword in their community. Whenever they don't have anything else to support or substantiate their claims of retiring tomorrow with an $80,000 portfolio, their clueless leaders will continue to spread misinformation and use buzzwords like cow pounding. Well, guys, in today's video, I will share why getting paid dividends weekly versus getting paid dividends monthly makes next to no difference, and why it might actually be costing you more money to intentionally go after weekly payers. So the high yield dividend warriors are claiming that weekly paying ETFs are better because they can snowball their investments quicker. What they are saying at the surface level is true. I'm not going to deny that. If you are getting cash flow quicker, you can reinvest and get more dividends. However, the problem that I have with what they're saying is that they are severely overestimating how big of a difference this actually makes. And I'm going to show you guys with facts and logic. So if we go over here, this is a compound interest calculator. It's not a compound interest calculator. A lot of these dividend warriors have never seen a calculator in their life. I'm going to show them how to use it so they can see what they're doing is foolish. So let's say we have an initial investment of $10,000, right? We're not going to add any more money, so we'll just leave that at zero. We're not going to deposit any money or take out any money, so it doesn't really matter what we put here. Now, for the rate of return, I'm going to be generous and say QDTE and XDTE will give a 10% return every year for the next 25 years. I actually think that's extremely generous. I don't think these ETFs will actually do that well going forward, but for now, I will just be very optimistic and give them the benefit of the doubt there. So this is the one that we want to pay attention to, right? The compounding frequency. So we don't want it to be annually, but first let's show how much it is weekly. So that's going to be this one, weekly 52. We don't care about taxes or inflation right now, even though we should in real life, but a lot of the high yield dividend warriors don't care about taxes apparently. All right, so now what is our total amount, right? So if we go here, we can see that after 25 years with a 10% interest rate that gets compounded weekly, we get a grand total of $121,532. That's definitely a lot of money. That's the power of these potential investments that we make today can really grow into a lot of money over time. But let's see how big of a difference getting compounded weekly versus monthly actually makes. So if we go to this and change it to monthly, now it's only getting compounded 12 times a year. Let's see how big of a difference this actually makes. Whoa, did you guys see that? It's still a lot of money. It's $120,569. Again, there is a little bit of a difference, right? A whole $1,000 difference. Guys, this is over 25 years, and it's assuming we get a super juicy interest rate, 10%, which I don't think is going to happen. I highly doubt most of the high yield dividend warriors knew that the difference between getting paid weekly versus monthly is actually this little. Like, this was $1,000 difference over a 25-year time span. But let's be honest, most of these high yield dividend warriors, they're just jumping ship from investment to investment. So if we change the amount of years to how long they'll actually hold it, I think I'm also being generous with this one. Let's just say it's 5 years, right? That's how long they're going to hold it. So you got 16,453 if it's 5 years and it's getting compounded monthly. But if we change that to weekly, you can see the compound difference be very trivial, right? If it's monthly, it's going to be 16,453. If it's weekly, it's going to be 16,479, a difference of $26. That is so immaterial. There's so many more important things to worry about than how frequently an ETF is paying out dividends. Okay, let's say you didn't trust this calculator. Again, for some of us, this is the first time we've ever used a calculator. Some of the high yield dividend warriors, they're not familiar with what this is. Well, they might be familiar with what ChatGPT is. So I asked the legendary AI bot, hey, if I had $10,000 and over the next 25 years, I got an average rate of return of 10%, and the only difference is that with one fund, my investment got compounded weekly. I should have said cowpounded. That was my chance at letting ChatGPT know about the new high yield dividend warrior lingo. Anyway, so if I got compounded weekly while the other fund got compounded monthly, what would the total of the two funds be at the end of 25 years? So there's actually a compound interest formula, and it tells you exactly what each of these variables is, including the interest rate, the amount of money, the principal, the amount of times it gets compounded. You can see all the different components of the calculation, but let's just go all the way to the end. Let's get to the good part. So after 25 years, your weekly compounding total is going to be 108,347. The monthly compounding total is going to be 107,357. Guys, this is after 25 years. You're only walking away with a $1,000 difference. Again, the more you can get your money compounding, it is better, but it is very trivial. It is certainly not as important as many of these YouTubers are making it sound like. So as you can see, the difference between getting paid weekly versus monthly is trivial. But one thing that I don't think gets paid enough attention in this space is that when you pay 4 times a month, that's going to be more administrative cost for the fund provider to issue those dividends 4 times more than the monthly payers. Plus, there's going to be so much volatility happening with the share price, and that could impact the fund manager's state of mind as well, and not in positive ways. And this is another thing that many people just overlook, but compound that with also being an actively managed fund, doing complex trading strategies, and being a smaller organization than, say, a JP Morgan Chase or Goldman Sachs. And you'll see that QDTE, they do have a relatively high expense ratio of 95 basis points. Now, this is not a video trying to point out that the expense ratio is high. I understand smaller companies, organizations, they need to survive as well, and they do deserve to be compensated for their work. JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs, they have other world domination activities that are funding their payroll. Roundhill, as far as I know, doesn't have that segment yet. Instead, what I do want to point out is how often people overlook high expense ratios and how much these can actually eat into your returns. Let's go to NerdWallet and actually see this mutual fund calculator. This same concept applies with ETFs, right? So let's say we go back to our initial example of a $10,000 investment. Let's say every month you're adding in $500. I think that's doable for most Americans. Scratch that. For if you're watching investing videos on YouTube, you can probably put away $500 a month. That gets you to $6,000 a year. Every year you're contributing that much, and we're doing this over the next 25 years, again, giving a generous rate of return of 10%. But let's say the fund expense ratio is 99 basis points. That's what a lot of these popular income ETFs are charging. So let's see how much in fees we're actually paying over the life of the investment. That means our ending value with fees is going to be $641,000. But if we had not paid any fees, we would have had $757,437. So that's a huge difference, guys. That is $116,000. Now, this is not trivial. You see how people are overly interested in how frequently their dividends are getting compounded, but what they are not paying attention to is how much these fees over time can eat away at their returns. I do also want to point out that the fund providers are taking this money out regardless if they actually make any money or not. And this is why I always say people should be looking at expense ratio when making investment decisions. One of my favorite ETFs, SCHD, an amazing ETF. Some will say I'm collecting my SCHD gold bars, but their expense ratio is super low. It's like 6 basis points. So let's see how much SCHD cost over a 25-year horizon. So here, the cost of fees is so much less. It's only $7,000, and SCHD has a proven track record of excellence. I understand getting paid more frequently makes you feel good, I love getting paid too. It's a great feeling. I love to feel good. But if someone was going to pay me $400 at the end of every month or $100 every week for 4 weeks, but the catch was I had to now pay a 1% expense ratio, I think it's a pretty easy decision on which one I'm going to choose. Now, there's many that are unfortunately in this community, they're saying the only important thing is how high the yield is and how frequently it pays out as well. I'm here to tell you none of those things matter in the slightest. With proper budgeting, it does not matter if a company pays weekly, monthly, daily, on Christmas in October, or on your wife's birthday. Take some accountability. Learn how to control yourself. Learn how to budget. L2B guys, learn to budget. High yield dividend warriors, you guys need to learn these things. Some of these new dividend warrior disciples, they start popping out and making their own channels every week. There's this new guy who just like stares right into your soul the whole time. Aren't you glad I never stare at you? Aren't you glad I'm a faceless channel? He tells you about how great weekly dividends are and metaphors and motivational stories about retiring early. Guys, you guys need to critically think about what you're doing with your hard-earned money. You work way too hard to see your money burn into terrible investment. Again, this video has very little to actually do with Roundhill's QDTE and XDTE. I've made separate videos going over the pros and cons of these type of ETFs. This video is again to emphasize that getting paid weekly or what time of the month, it makes absolutely no difference. You need to invest in high quality companies or ETFs. We showed those dividend warriors what a calculator is. They better get familiar with it because where they're going, that number is going to be 0 and they're going to get used to that. Thank you to all the Patreons that make these videos possible. Make sure you leave a like to help out a small time YouTuber. Make sure you're subscribed. Join the Discord for some great conversations, and I'll catch you on the next one.